Let's continue our adventure atop Lookout Mountain here at the Battles for Chattanooga Museum and check out their digital projection map and watch the video about the battle above the clouds and subsequent assaults on Orchard Knob and Missionary Ridge that make up the Battles for Chattanooga, happening in Chattanooga and surrounding areas on November 23rd through November 25th, 1863. Have you ever wanted to know the process of loading and firing a cannon? If you want to learn the steps of loading and firing a cannon, take a moment and pause this video or stay tuned to see it in action from footage of a cannon being prepared and fired at Old Fort Jackson in Savannah, Georgia.
Search peace. Load. Canister. Load. Sponge. Ram. Prime. My hand to the front. March. Hop. Point. Gun number one, ready! Fire!
Now we are making our way inside this museum located at the entrance to historic Point Park, where the battle labeled Battle Above the Clouds happened. The video we will watch here in a few short minutes provides a good foundation for learning what transpired here 160 years ago. Make sure you check back for future episodes where we go in the footsteps of history and visit the battlefield sites. Over there is Missionary Ridge. We're currently up top of the mountain there.
Has fallen to Ulysses S. Grant. Now, Union armies are massing in eastern Tennessee in a determined effort to cut the South in two. The small town of Chattanooga is about to take its place in history. As a major railroad center connecting the East, West, and South, Chattanooga is a strategic point for supplying the Southern troops with ammunition, food, and clothing. As Union General William Rosecrans' Army of the Cumberland suddenly advances on the town, its defenders withdraw. Seeking better defensive positions, the Confederate Army of Tennessee retreats into Georgia. Within days, its commander, General Braxton Bragg, receives reinforcements. As federal troops move in pursuit, the armies collide. On September 19th and 20th, in some of the war's bloodiest and most desperate fighting, Union troops are defeated at the Battle of Chickamauga. The fight is over. More than 16,000 Northerners and 18,500 Southerners lie dead, wounded, or missing in the dark and bloody forests of North Georgia. The Federals retreat hastily and in great disarray to Chattanooga to await what they consider to be the inevitable Confederate assault. The Southern forces have suffered badly, and Braxton Bragg is cautious. Ignoring the pleas of his staff, Bragg chooses to conduct a siege rather than attack. Bragg's strategy is to occupy the high ground of Lookout Mountain and Missionary Ridge, cutting off the best supply lines and starving out the Union Army. Impatient with his plans and offended by what they consider to be Bragg's high-handed treatment of them and their men, some officers are openly calling for his dismissal. Meanwhile, Union troops tear down the town's houses, barns, sheds, and fences as they entrench. Their axes and saws fell the surrounding trees as they build their fortifications and prepare for the upcoming winter. They cling as best they can to the north bank. Pockets of fog help to conceal their passage. Speaking only when necessary, in guarded whispers, they pass unnoticed by the Confederates on the south bank of the river. As the boats wind downriver, a column of Union troops slips through the darkness to support their attack. At 5 a.m., Union signal fires alert the men in the boats to their landing point on the opposite bank. Pushing across the river, the raiding party gets to within 10 feet of shore before the first shots are fired by Confederate pickets. Outnumbered, the foes fight briefly before conceding the ferry to the Yankees. As dawn breaks, several hundred reinforcements ferry across the river to support the raiding party. Construction of a pontoon bridge linking the north and south banks begins at once, and by 4:30 in the afternoon, it is complete. The following morning, Confederate Generals Bragg and Longstreet meet on Lookout Mountain to discuss a move to regain Brown's Ferry. The two men are bitter rivals. Suddenly, a scout reports that Federal troops have been spotted moving into Lookout Valley from the west. This news takes Bragg and Longstreet by surprise. From Sunset Rock on the west brow, the two generals watch as fighting Joe Hooker's soldiers march up the valley. Bragg warns Longstreet, if those Yankees take control of Lookout Valley, they'll be able to move supplies across that pontoon bridge and into Chattanooga at will. You must attack them tonight. Sir, the surprise of a night attack could work, but I'll need 2 good divisions to be sure of success. You'll have Jenkins and McLaw's divisions. I'll issue the orders. Hooker's Union troops, tired by their forced march from Bridgeport, make camp. 5,000 men halt a mile short of Brown's Ferry. Another 1,500 camp around the railroad station near the creek at Wauhatchie. All upon the unfortified Union position at Wauhatchie, an intense struggle begins. The fighting is at close quarters and deadly. Hooker's artillerymen fire special shells fitted with short fuses. The casements explode, showering fire across the night sky. Between those bursts, the battle is fought in darkness. Every flash of musket fire provides a target. Every sound or movement is a threat. Chaos and confusion reign. Troops fire on their own men. Running short of ammunition, Federal troops scavenge the cartridge boxes of their fallen comrades. Rebel battle cries echo eerily in the night. But fortune begins to smile on Grant and his men. With the so-called Cracker Line open to the Federal depot in Bridgeport, supplies are starting to pour into the Union camp. Within a week of Ulysses S. Grant's arrival in Chattanooga, his soldiers are on increased rations, and their morale soars. Grant telegraphs Washington, if the rebels will give me 1 week more time, I think all danger of losing territory now held by us will have passed away, and preparations may commence for offensive operations. There is no such revival on the Confederate side. As his troops huddle miserably in the rain, Bragg continues to wait. Demoralization and hardship breed despair in the ranks. Rations are scarce. Many soldiers lacking tents have only their thin, tattered blankets for shelter. Desertions increase, while the infighting between Braxton Bragg and his officers intensifies. One soldier writes, I felt it would be a great relief to die. Longstreet calls for Bragg to be replaced by Robert E. Lee. He writes to the Secretary of War, we need a mind as great as General Lee's to break the Union forces. but Confederate President Jefferson Davis continues to stand behind Bragg. On November 12th, Bragg takes additional measures to stifle dissent, reorganizing his army and transferring many officers out of their commands. On November 15th, he issues orders that further reduce his troops' rations. Desertion becomes punishable by death. Bragg's fighting strength is now reduced to about 50,000, while the Union forces will soon muster to 70,000 strong. From Orchard Knob, Confederate pickets gaze down on Fort Wood, where Federal troops scurry to answer the daily bugle call and fall in for drill. To the Yankees, the more than 600 rebels in their individual rifle pits on the hill resemble a colony of curious groundhogs. Unfortunately for the groundhogs, an eagle is about to swoop. It is November 23rd. General Sherman is finishing his long, hard march from the west, bringing with him 17,000 battle-tested veterans. Grant now believes he has sufficient strength to break the siege of Chattanooga. His first move is to probe the defenses at Orchard Knob. At 1:50 p.m., Grant orders General Thomas to launch 20,000 men against the rebel position at Orchard Knob. The troops advance almost to the foot of the hill before the Confederate pickets realize it is an attack. The fight is intense but brief. The maneuver is a demonstration of strength that prevents Bragg from sending more troops to Knoxville. But to Grant's surprise, it is also an easy victory. Orchard Knob now becomes headquarters for Thomas. In a desperate attempt to break the Federals' new supply line, the Confederates launch logs downriver. The logs rush down the swollen river and smash the pontoon bridge at Brown's Ferry. The rear guard of Sherman's column is stranded on the south side of the river. Fighting Joe Hooker recommends that Grant take advantage of the Union's unexpected troop strength on the south side to attack Lookout Mountain. Grant approves and orders Hooker's men up the steep west face of Lookout Mountain. Early on the morning of November 24th, fog rises off the Tennessee River, and a thin, cold rain drifts down as they climb. Then in position beneath the crest, the three columns of Union soldiers sweep north across the slope of the fog-shrouded mountain. At 9 a.m., Hooker's men make contact with the enemy. As shots rain out, Union artillery at Moccasin Bend signals the assault. Confederate cannon on top of the mountain ineffectively return fire. The southern defenses have been positioned to repel an assault from below. Attacked from their flank, they retreat behind boulders, trees, and fallen logs as they fire back at their attackers. Confederate artillery is poorly positioned on top of the mountain. Salvos carry over the heads of the enemy. The gunners frantically attempt to lower their aim by tilting the angle of their cannon with rocks, but with little success. Confederate commanders meet to discuss their situation at the house of Robert Cravens, prosperous owner of the East Tennessee Iron Manufacturing Company. This White House stands out as the most prominent landmark on the north slope of Lookout Mountain. Suddenly, hundreds of Union soldiers burst from the woods into the clearing around the house, shouting battle cries and firing muskets. Union artillery shells add to the havoc, noise, and confusion as the ground quakes with each hit. It is sheer terror. The Confederates are forced to abandon Craven's house as they retreat from the fray. The clouds above and below the plateau around Craven's house frame the blue uniforms and the national flag, creating an inspiring sight for the Union troops in the valley below. By 2 p.m., the battle above the clouds is history. Cloaked by darkness, Bragg's troops withdraw to Missionary Ridge. The following morning, November 25th, dawn is clear and sunny. Captain John Wilson of the Union's 8th Kentucky Regiment raises the stars and stripes on the point of Lookout Mountain. Cheers erupt from the blue-coated troops in the valley below. With Lookout Mountain secured, Grant sets his sights on the Confederates' main positions along Missionary. Grant's plan is to have Sherman attack the ridge at its northern end, while Hooker attacks from the south. Upstream from the city on the north bank of the river, boats have been secretly prepared. As Sherman's men march from their positions north of Chattanooga, the boats are launched, and a landing party crosses the Tennessee River, establishing a beachhead on the south bank. A pontoon bridge is hurriedly built, and Sherman's main troops cross the Tennessee. Sherman is now in position to move against the rebels on Missionary Ridge. With complete confidence that Sherman and his battle-hardened veterans of the Western campaigns will succeed, Ulysses S. Grant orders them to begin their assault on the 25th from their position at the north end of the ridge. But due to a faulty map, Sherman occupies a hill which is separated from Missionary Ridge by a wooded valley. Realizing that Grant plans to attack his right flank, Bragg orders General Patrick Cleburne to move up from Chickamauga Station and defend the ridge's northern end. Cleburne's division is the elite unit of the Army of Tennessee and has the honor of carrying its own distinctive flag, a blue field emblazoned with a full silver moon. The fight begins at dawn. A deafening roar rolls across the Tennessee hills as cannon and muskets duel. Sherman quickly realizes that his troops are not on Missionary Ridge. To reach it, they must fight their way across a shallow valley. The Yankees advance against a storm of minie balls and exploding shells. Cleburne's artillerymen load and fire so quickly that the barrels of their guns become too hot to touch. The fight rages for hours. Charges and countercharges are made under torrents of fire. Drifting clouds of thick white smoke and the sulphurous fumes of gunpowder summon up visions of heaven. By mid-afternoon, Cleburne's soldiers are almost out of ammunition. As Sherman's troops press their attack, the situation becomes critical. Cleburne orders his men to fix their bayonets and charge. The Southerners rush down the slope, bayonets flashing in the sun. Stunned by the ferocity of the assault, the Federals turn and run. 500 are taken prisoner. Sherman's attack is stalled. Cleburne's soldiers have won the first round, and the South retains control of Missionary Ridge. Down from Lookout Mountain into the valley to cross Chattanooga Creek. He's following Grant's orders to attack the Confederate left flank from Rossville Gap. But the creek is flooded, and the retreating rebels have burned the only bridge, slowing Hooker's advance. There is a critical delay before his troops can get across the creek and advance toward Missionary Ridge. At his headquarters on Orchard Knob, Grant has spent the morning and most of the afternoon anticipating Sherman's victory and Hooker's attack. He is disappointed on both counts, and daylight is waning. Grant decides to move Thomas's troops forward to the foot of Missionary Ridge, hoping that Bragg will recall formations from his right flank to support his center. That would allow Sherman to resume his attack. At 3:40 p.m., 6 cannon are fired in rapid succession, signaling Thomas's troops to advance. 24,000 men stretch out in a giant crescent across the plain, moving determinedly toward the southern positions a mile away. From atop Missionary Ridge, 50 Confederate cannon open fire on the Federals. Union artillery blazes in response. Missionary Ridge appears like a breathing, seething volcano, shooting out liquid fire and smoke as the advance continues. But the Confederate artillery is again badly positioned. Thomas's men crave revenge for their losses at Chickamauga and are eager to fight. But Grant's orders are for them to halt after taking the first line of rifle pits. Pass down the line from commander to commander. The orders leave many unclear about their objective. As Thomas's men close on the ridge, the rebel shells now pass harmlessly over their heads. A half-mile out, Union troops in the front ranks can see the yellowish streaks of dirt which mark the first line of rifle pits. They break into a run. Their charge sweeps across the plain like a raging prairie fire. The Confederates at the foot of the ridge are overwhelmed by this awesome sight. Panicking, they abandon their first line of defense as they rush to their rear. Successive waves of Union troops surge to the foot of the ridge and halt following Grant's orders, wondering what to do next. Confusion reigns on both sides. The rebels, retreating up the ridge, block the field of fire of their comrades in the second and third lines above them and are easy targets for the Union soldiers below. The poorly stationed Confederate cannons cannot be aimed effectively down the slope. Many Southerners throw away their muskets and knapsacks as they struggle toward the safety of the summit. Still emboldened by their charge, and with the realization that staying put is suicidal, one by one, Union troops in small bands quickly decide to continue advancing in close pursuit of the retreating Confederates. Union artillery pounds the side and crest of the ridge. Across ravines, fallen logs, and rifle pits, the Yankees charge, fighting for pride and survival. Shouts of "Chickamauga! Chickamauga!" spur their determined frenzy to reach the top. From Orchard Knob, Grant watches as the Bluecoats begin ascending the ridge. He had specifically ordered that Thomas's troops halt at its foot. Who ordered those men up that ridge? I don't know. I did not. Granger, did you order them up? No. When those fellows get started, all hell can't stop them. Well, if they are not successful, someone is going to pay dearly for it. On the slope, Arthur MacArthur, 18-year-old adjutant of the 24th Wisconsin Volunteer Infantry, rescues his unit's flag from the hands of a wounded color bearer. His lungs burning from the grueling climb and thick smoke, he cries out, "On, Wisconsin!" over and over as he charges upward. Reaching the summit, he turns his back on the enemy and waves his regiment on. In a growling, cursing final push, the Union troops swarm over the crest of the ridge as young MacArthur collapses in exhaustion. The Confederates, positioned behind breastworks at the top of the ridge, are dazed by the sudden appearance of the Yankees. They fire, but with no time to reload, they are rapidly overrun. Southern artillerymen attempt to retreat with their cannon, but several guns are captured when Federal marksmen shoot their lead horses at bayonet point to turn their cannon against their retreating comrades. The withdrawal becomes a panic-stricken rout, while the Yankees, crazed with joy, celebrate in the former Confederate positions. General Bragg watches as his army disintegrates. Dismounting from his horse, he tries to rally the soldiers. "I am here. Do not disgrace yourselves. Fight for your country." The men he has treated so contemptuously in the past ignore his pleas. The beaten Confederates stream down the east side of Missionary Ridge, making for the railroad at Chickamauga Station and the towns of Ringgold and Dalton in North Georgia. The Confederate Army of Tennessee is defeated. Though the siege has lasted 66 days, the decisive assault has taken only about an hour and a half. The way to Atlanta lies open. The fate of the Confederacy is sealed. Bragg will resign his mismanaged command on November 30th. In May, Sherman will begin his decisive, destructive march through Georgia to the sea. Grant is rewarded by a grateful Congress with the rank of Lieutenant General. Until now, only George Washington has been so honored. The battles for Chattanooga have seen much suffering on both sides, and much bravery. Arthur MacArthur of the Wisconsin Volunteer Infantry will receive the Medal of Honor for his heroic conduct on Missionary Ridge. He will return home after the war to father a son who will be first in his class at West Point and earn 7 Silver Stars in World War I. Later, General Douglas MacArthur will go on to win a Medal of Honor of his own for his defense of the Philippines in World War II. The battles for Chattanooga are over. Superior leadership on one side was important, but it was the determined efforts and endurance of the common soldiers that proved decisive. Some never left the field, but many returned home with stories which would last for generations.